Nobody hands you a manual for that first sunrise when the house holds its breath, and the only heartbeat you hear thumping against the quiet is your own. The familiar soundtrack of another person shuffling in the hallway or wrestling with the newspaper has gone silent. What remains is the soft percussion of your own footsteps, the whisper of the furnace clicking on, and a strange spaciousness that feels equal parts liberation and a question mark hanging in the air. You might stand there in your bathrobe, nursing a single cup, wondering if this emptiness is a cage or a canvas. The truth is, it's whichever you decide to build. Living solo in your later years isn't the sad, dusty epilogue that television dramas like to paint. When constructed with intention, it can morph into the most sovereign, unapologetically rich season you've ever owned. Today, we are walking through 10 distinct, battle-tested realities that distinguish the seniors who are genuinely flourishing in solitude from those who are merely waiting out the clock. We aren't talking about fluff or cliché advice like join a book club. We are excavating the gritty, tender, and often humorous mechanics of keeping your internal fire stoked and preventing your pantry from becoming a nutritionally dubious buffet of impulse buys. Keep watching. This conversation might just rearrange the way you look at your own four walls. The first pillar is the establishment of a deliberate weekly architecture, not just a hazy list of possibilities. There is a seductive lie that retirement or living alone means every hour is a blank slate of freedom. "I'll just see where the wind takes me" sounds romantic for roughly 72 hours. After that, the vast, featureless ocean of time becomes a riptide that drags you under into a sea of lethargy. When Tuesday feels exactly like Thursday and Saturday has no texture, your sense of agency begins to dissolve. You lose the plot of your own life. A deliberate structure is your defense against that drift. It's not about cramming your calendar with noise and obligations to drown out the silence. It's about erecting signposts in the week that give your soul a destination. Seniors who radiate a sense of calm control often whisper the same secret. They branded each day of the week with a specific emotional flavor. Mondays might be for system resets and provisioning the kitchen. Wednesdays might hold the weight of a long walk or a creative pursuit. Saturdays are for savoring, perhaps a slow breakfast and an album played from start to finish. This isn't rigidity, it's rhythm. Consider the story of Eleanor, age 76. After losing her partner of 50 years, she described her life as a boat cut loose from the mooring. The sameness of the days was a physical ache. Then she and her daughter designed a compass calendar. Monday was her administrative command center day, sorting mail, paying the water bill, changing the linens. Wednesday was her outward-bound day. She committed to a volunteer shift at the local library reshelving books. Friday afternoon was strictly reserved for a video chat with her grandson where they'd solve the New York Times crossword puzzle together. Were the errands thrilling? Hardly. But the act of having a place to be at 11 o'clock on a Wednesday, a place where someone expected her and a cart full of books needed her hands, restored the gravity of her existence. You don't need a military operations schedule. You need the gentle scaffolding of intention. A weekly blueprint reminds you that you are not merely a passenger watching the scenery blur past the window. You are still the one holding the steering wheel, and the direction is forward. 2. Cultivating a social tether that doesn't require you to perform or beg. Here is a bruise that many solo dwellers try to hide. Loneliness isn't just the absence of bodies in the room. It's the exhaustion of being the sole person responsible for keeping the bridge to humanity open. It's the weariness of typing out yet another, "Hey, just checking in" message and watching the cursor blink back at you with no reply. That specific type of fatigue can hollow you out. Thriving older adults, the ones who seem buoyant rather than brittle, have engineered what we might call a low-friction lifeline. This is a connection that operates on autopilot. It is a recurring event that does not require a calendar invite, a confirmation text, or an energy expenditure to make it happen. It simply exists, as reliably as the mail delivery. You require a relationship that moves on tracks. It might be the neighbor across the street who always walks her poodle precisely at 3:45, and you both exchange a wave that means "I see you and I'm okay." It might be a standing appointment with a sibling every Sunday evening where the conversation is less about grand announcements and more about the mundane details of the week. The broken sprinkler head, the new cashier at the market. It's the consistency, not the content, that does the heavy lifting. The most elegant version of this lifeline doesn't care if you're in a sour mood or if your hair is a mess. It doesn't ask you to be entertaining. It just shows up. I spoke with a gentleman named Arthur, 72, who calls his arrangement the Wednesday Echo. Every Wednesday at 6 p.m. sharp, his phone buzzes. It's his former co-worker, Larry, who lives 3 states away. They don't FaceTime because nobody needs to see this mug. Arthur jokes, they just talk. Sometimes about baseball trades, sometimes about the weather. And occasionally one of them says, "You know, I miss her a lot today." And the other just listens. That call is the keel that keeps Arthur's emotional boat steady. The crucial insight is this. It should feel as easy as breathing. Not another item on a checklist, but a gentle gravitational pull that confirms you are still woven into the fabric of something larger than yourself. Knowing that at a specific hour, a voice or a face will appear for you. That's the safety net that allows you to walk the tightrope of solitude with confidence. 3. Curating a living environment that champions motion, not just slumber. When we talk about making a home safe for aging, the conversation usually careens toward grab bars in the shower and extra cushioning on the sofa. And while safety is paramount, an environment optimized solely for comfort is a velvet-lined trap. A chair that swallows you whole is an enemy of vitality. Your home should function as a silent personal trainer, a subtle conductor of an orchestra of movement. It should be wired to nudge you into engagement, to make standing up and doing something the path of least resistance. A vibrant life alone is fueled by these micro-impulses that keep the blood circulating and the neurons firing. Let's look at a real-world shift. Martin, a retired architect of 81, realized he had become a permanent fixture in his corner recliner. The remote control had become an extension of his arm. One afternoon, he conducted an audit of his own behavior. He moved the most comfortable reading lamp across the room, placing it beside a straight-backed chair near the bay window. He placed his binoculars and a bird identification book on the sill. He took his walking shoes out of the closet and set them right next to the front doormat, pointed outward as if they were already in stride. Within a week, his habits had reversed-engineered themselves. He wasn't forcing himself to be active. The arrangement of his furniture was inviting him toward the window, toward the birds, toward the door. When your space is optimized for momentum, even the most trivial tasks become motion triggers. If the kettle is on the counter but the tea bags are in a high cabinet, you need a step stool to reach, you've just performed a stretch. If the book you're enjoying is left open on a table in the sunroom instead of buried on the nightstand, you're more likely to migrate toward the light and settle there for an hour of mental travel. If the hand weights are tucked behind the vacuum cleaner, they might as well not exist. But if they are resting on a shelf at eye level in the den, they ask a quiet question. 5 minutes? This isn't about Spartan minimalism or gym equipment, it's about engineering the terrain of your daily life so that it gently whispers, "Let's move a little today." You want a dwelling that prods you toward the window, not a cavern that lulls you into a permanent state of pause. 4. Constructing a psychological storm shelter, not just pinning up cheerful slogans. Let's dispense with the toxic positivity right now. When you're sitting in the depths of a grief spiral or the weight of an empty apartment presses down on your chest, being told to look on the bright side feels like a slap with a wet napkin. Seniors who are truly robust in their solitude didn't get there by whistling past the graveyard. They got there by building a customized, battle-hardened toolkit for navigating the squalls of the human heart. Resilience is not the ability to avoid the undertow. It's knowing exactly which rope to grab when you feel yourself going under. It's the capacity to sit with the discomfort without letting it drown you. This toolkit is deeply personal and often looks quite mundane to the outside observer. For some, it's a specific playlist of music that validates the sorrow rather than trying to fix it. For others, it's a series of movements or a specific route walked around the block. I learned about a woman named Clara, 79, who calls her method the triangle of sanity. When she feels the fog of panic or despair descending, Often triggered by anniversaries or a piece of news she can't shake, she executes 3 specific actions. First, she boils water and makes a strong cup of black tea, focusing entirely on the sound of the kettle and the steam rising. Second, she retrieves a worn-out leather journal and writes without punctuation or filter, just vomiting the anxiety onto the page until her hand cramps. Third, she reads aloud a short poem by Mary Oliver that her late husband had underlined for her decades ago. That's not a magic spell. That's a procedural exit ramp from the highway of panic. It's a somatic and cognitive reset. Many thriving solo seniors keep what amounts to a break glass in case of emergency corner. It might be a soft blanket in a specific chair, a vial of lavender oil, or a photo album of the best times that serves as evidence that joy existed and can exist again. The takeaway here is profound. The goal is not to make the hard days vanish. The goal is to be fully outfitted for them. When you have a plan for the storm loses its power to capsize you. You know where the life jacket is stored. You know how to ride it out until the sky clears. 5. Maintaining an external demand that tracks visible forward motion. There is a peculiar and dangerous narcotic that comes with a door you can close on the world. The gradual erosion of why bother. When no one is expecting a report, when there is no supervisor or partner to witness your output, the internal engine can start to idle roughly. Days congeal into a shapeless mass, and with that loss of texture comes a quiet, insidious question. Does any of this effort matter? This is precisely why an external anchor of accountability is not a burden, but a gift. Seniors who retain a spark of purpose have something, or someone, that notices if they don't show up. It's a gentle demand that keeps them from vanishing into the wallpaper of their own home. This isn't about high-pressure deadlines, it's about visibility and progression. Take the example of Sylvia, a retired bookkeeper in Vermont. She signed up for a community garden plot, not necessarily for the zucchinis, but because the garden manager does a walkthrough every Tuesday morning. If Sylvia's plot is overrun with weeds, it will be noted. More importantly, if Sylvia's plot is flourishing, she will receive a nod of approval. That small external nod, the recognition of her stewardship, is the propellant that gets her out of bed on humid July mornings when her bones ache. Another example is Ben, who took on the role of family archivist. He committed to digitizing a box of his parents' slides and emailing 1 image per week to his extended family with a short caption explaining the context. Now his inbox is flooded on Friday mornings with replies from cousins and nieces saying, "That story about the '57 Chevy made my day." He has a queue of people waiting for the next installment. That waiting queue is his accountability. Progress doesn't need to be a mountain summit. It can be a row of colored squares on a knitting project, a completed level on a brain training app, or the satisfaction of a polished window. When something external reflects your effort back to you, even if it's just the tally of miles on a pedometer, you transition from passively enduring the day to actively possessing it. And that shift is the bedrock of self-respect. 6. Deploying a technological scaffold that empowers rather than enrages. Let's acknowledge the elephant in the router. Technology can either be a sleek bridge to the world or a jagged cliff face of frustration. For every video call that warms the heart, there is a frozen screen and a lost password that makes you want to throw the device out the window. Seniors who navigate the digital landscape successfully don't necessarily love gadgets. They have simply hacked the system to make it servile. They have tamed the beast enough to get what they need and ignore the rest. This is not about becoming a programmer or mastering the latest social media dance craze. It's about identifying 3 to 5 specific, life-enhancing functions and making them idiot-proof. Take the case of Irene, 83, living independently in a small coastal town. Driving at night is off the table. Her granddaughter helped her configure a tablet with a ruthlessly streamlined interface. The home screen has only 4 massive, clearly labeled buttons: doctor visit, get food, see grandkids, and library books. That's it. No web browser, no news alerts, no clutter. She uses voice commands to set timers for her medication and to add "buy more pickles" to her shopping list. Technology is her invisible staff, not her demanding overlord. But the most crucial element here is the tech support parachute. Every thriving senior has identified a designated, non-judgmental ally, a neighbor kid, a patient nephew, a service they pay for, who can swoop in and fix the dreaded, "You are not connected to the internet" message without sighing heavily or using jargon. Many seniors abandon technology entirely after one humiliating encounter with a glitch, but the ones who stick with it treat tech as a utility. They use it to compress the distance between what their body can do and what their spirit wants to experience. Whether it's a medical alert pendant that silently stands guard, a digital frame that cycles through family photos from across the country, or a simple voice assistant that prevents them from burning the toast. A well-tuned tech setup should operate like the plumbing, reliable, quiet, and absolutely essential for modern dignity. 7. A non-negotiable treaty with the physical self. When you are the sole occupant of your vessel, the maintenance of that vessel becomes a matter of existential urgency. There is no one else to notice that you're favoring your left knee for the third week in a row. No one else observes that the bag of carrots is wilting in the crisper drawer, while the cheese and crackers are vanishing at an alarming rate. If you want to remain not just upright, but actually dynamic in your solitude, you must enter into a sacred, unbreakable pact with your own body. This is the baseline level of care that never gets traded away for laziness or a gloomy mood. It's the floor, not the ceiling. This doesn't mean calorie counting or obsessive stretching every time you stand up. It means honoring the simple, unglamorous metrics of being alive. Think of Roger, a 75-year-old who lives alone in a high-rise. He doesn't own a smartwatch because he finds them distracting. Instead, he has 3 post-it notes taped to his bathroom mirror. They read, "Move." He taps the counter when he's been sitting too long. "Water." He fills a large carafe each morning and finishes it by dinner. And "veggies." A visual cue to put something green on the plate. That's the treaty. It's visual, it's dumb, and it works. The seniors who are winning at this game understand that prevention is the ultimate form of self-respect. They do not wait for the back spasm to become debilitating before they roll out the yoga mat. They don't skip the annual checkup because "I feel fine right now." And they absolutely do not allow days to slip by where the primary source of nutrition is toast crusts and lukewarm coffee. They have made a promise to walk, to nourish, and to rest with the same commitment they once gave to their careers or families. When the physical chassis is running smoothly, or at least acceptably, the mental and emotional software follows suit. You don't need to be an athlete. You just need to be the diligent caretaker of the only home you can never move out of. 8. Welcoming micro-quests and unscheduled bursts of delight. Routine is the skeleton that holds the week upright, but it can also calcify into a prison if you're not careful. When the landscape of your life becomes entirely predictable, the same soup, the same chair, the same view from the same window, your spirit begins to hibernate. It enters a low-power mode. Seniors who radiate a youthful, almost mischievous energy have carved out space for what we might call purposeful serendipity. These are micro-adventures. Not a safari in Kenya, but a deliberate deviation from the script. It's the intentional jolt of novelty that pokes the sleeping bear of your curiosity and says, "Hey, we're not dead yet." These are small, low-stakes gambles that pay out in dopamine. I heard about a man named Frank, 82, who lives on the bus line in Seattle. Every other Thursday, and he marks this in red ink on his calendar, he boards a random bus line he has never taken before. He rides it for 20 minutes. If he sees something intriguing, perhaps a diner with a line out the door, or a record store he didn't know existed, he pulls the cord and gets off. He calls it Frank's Field Trips. He's had bad coffee, bought a used Sinatra album, and once watched a glassblower for an hour. That afternoon of random input is the antidote to the monotony of the rest of the week. Or consider Ruth, who commits to cooking one ingredient she cannot pronounce. She came home with a rutabaga last week. "We had a tense standoff in the kitchen," she laughed. "But I won." The victory isn't in the final dish, it's in the battle. The essential ingredient here is the disruption of the pattern. It is the jamming of the autopilot signal. Novelty is the fertilizer for a young brain. Every time you turn left instead of right, Every time you taste something foreign, your brain builds a new bridge across a neuron canyon. Routine is necessary for survival, but a little weirdness is necessary for living. So yes, walk down the block that scares you a little. Say yes to the outing that feels slightly inconvenient. That's where the fizz is hiding. 9. Possessing a motive force that exceeds the boundaries of your own skin. When the walls are quiet and the company is scarce, it's remarkably easy to slip into the solipsistic fog of I don't matter. The antidote to that specific poison is a purpose that is larger than your own comfort or preservation. The most luminous, grounded seniors are not just living with themselves, they are living for something beyond themselves. A legacy, a cause, a debt of gratitude, or a simple promise whispered into the void. Because the raw, unvarnished truth is that there will be mornings when the joints creak like old floorboards and the sky outside is the color of concrete. On those mornings, self-care is a flimsy umbrella in a hurricane. You need a why that is heavy enough to pull you vertical. That weight might be the duty to pass down the family recipes before they're lost to time. It could be the conviction that the world is slightly less cruel because you feed the stray cat on the porch. For some, it's a spiritual covenant to be of service. For others, it's a quiet vow to honor the memory of a partner by living fully in the time they were denied. I think of Harold, an 84-year-old retired plumber. Twice a week, he sits in the back of a struggling elementary school classroom and listens to third graders stumble through Charlotte's Web. He doesn't teach reading. He just listens. He's there. He told me their parents are working 2 jobs. Someone just needs to nod and say, "Good job, kid." That's his why. It's simple, but it's heavier than a mountain. Or take Patricia, who crochets blankets for the neonatal ICU at the hospital where her husband died. She never sees the babies. She just drops the blankets at the front desk. That act of creation for a stranger she'll never meet anchors her in the stream of humanity. When your life is plugged into a socket that connects to the world outside your apartment, the current flows both ways. You might live alone, but your life is no longer a private, shrinking thing. It has reach, and that reach is what makes the solitude bearable and even beautiful. 10. An internal compass that doesn't spin in the wind. We end with the keel that runs deepest, the silent gyroscope that keeps the ship upright when the sea of existence turns choppy. Thriving in the later years of solitude is not merely a matter of good habits. It's a matter of having an internal narrative, a personal doctrine that makes sense of the chaos. When the external structures of career, marriage, or child-rearing have fallen away, you are left with the raw existential task of defining why you are still here. Seniors who are not just surviving, but humming with a quiet contentment have done the deep work of forging a personal philosophy. It's a set of bedrock beliefs, earned through scar tissue and starlight, that provides a soft place to land when the world feels harsh. This is not necessarily religious dogma, though for many it is. It is a framework of understanding. It might be a stoic acceptance that everything passes, so I will savor the good and weather the bad. It might be the gentle mantra, my only job today is to be kind. Or it might be the hard-won knowledge that I have survived everything life has thrown at me so far. I am not fragile glass. For many, it's a sentence that lives in their bones. I met a woman named Agnes, 77, who had endured more loss than most of us can fathom. Her anchor is a line she repeats to herself when the 3 a.m. dread creeps in. I am still breathing. That means I am still needed for something. That sentence is her tether to the present. Your personal philosophy does not need to be sophisticated enough for a university lecture hall. It just needs to be true enough to hold you. It needs to be the voice that answers back when the silence asks, "What's the point?" Because on a grey Tuesday, when you're looking out at the rain, that small, sturdy voice will whisper the reason you get dressed. It will tell you that this chapter, the one with the quiet apartment and the solo coffee mug, is not the closing credits. It is a vital, breathing, and wholly owned act of the play. And you are still very much on stage. Look around. Living alone after a certain age isn't merely about reorganizing the linen closet or finally eating ice cream for dinner without a single shred of guilt. Though let's be honest, that part is absolutely glorious. It's about waking up to the profound realization that this chapter isn't the leftover scraps from a feast that's already ended. It is a distinct, rich course all its own, and the seniors who make it look good, the ones who seem anchored and alert, aren't secretly richer or genetically blessed with an absence of sorrow. They have simply made a series of small, deliberate, and defiant decisions. They decided to stay curious about the bus route. They decided to let the phone ring on Wednesdays. They decided to keep showing up for the only life they have, even when the audience is a party of one. So whether you are peering over the edge of this new reality, or you've been navigating these waters for a decade, I want you to walk away from this with one clear note ringing in your ears. You are not finished. The story has plenty of ink left. And hey, if something in these words landed with you today, go ahead and tap that like button. It helps my channel reach more folks just like you. Share this with a friend who might be staring at their own quiet walls and wondering what's next. You might just be the spark that helps them build a life they're excited to wake up for. One beautiful, stubborn, perfectly ordinary Tuesday at a time. I'll see you in the next one.